that everybody brings enough food because we don't want Emily to go hungry. I just want to say good morning again. I think I met most of you coming in, or one period or another. Thank you for coming this morning. I met Choy, one of the pastors here. We've spent the last 2 weeks. Oh, sorry, I need to set my timer. If I don't set the timer, you know the preacher's going to go long. And if you were here last week, you know the preacher went a little bit long.
And you know, we can see the clock from here.
And I know. We're trying to resolve that, to cover that. And we haven't been able to do that yet, but we are introducing some new technology today, which is really exciting. So if you look in the back, there's a really nice new soundboard. Some generous folks donated for that, and so things are in transition. It's very exciting, and it's fitting that today we're talking about multiplication. So in the last 2 weeks, we've been unpacking our vision, not only for the year, but where is Restoration Church headed? Like, if you're new, this is a great time, because what is this church all about? That's what we've been trying to unpack in these 3 messages. And starting next week, we're going to, I'm really excited. I like these kind of messages. They're kind of a little more topical, though, a little more difficult for me. And next week, we're going to start a new series in the book of Genesis. Where did it all begin? And so hopefully that'll be of interest to all of you. Bring a friend, bring someone that's wrestling with science versus, whatever, and we'll dive into that. We got some scientists among us, and I thank God for that, so that'll be exciting. But when we think about where we're going as a church, that starts with being shaped by the mission of Jesus. So that's what we talked about 2 weeks ago from 2 Corinthians 5, that we have been given the ministry of reconciliation. Whether you're greeting at the door, working with kids, playing music, whatever it is, our mission is to bring reconciliation, to help people who are broken and separated their relationship with God, be reconciled to God, and then people being reconciled together, and then living on that mission together as a family to see people reconciled. The second part, last week we talked about being a multi-ethnic church, and we were in the most multi-ethnic diverse city in America. The 4 most diverse cities in America are right here in Montgomery County. So it's almost by default that you have to be, although most churches still aren't, but that's key to our DNA. And this morning, the third part of our vision is to be a multiplying church. Multiplication really has been part of our DNA from the very beginning, and it's reflected in our logo. So you may have never noticed this, but this is our logo, and this is the symbol for movement if you have this going back. Okay, so we've turned it into an R, okay, but this is symbol for movement, and it's our 3-part strategy, which is up in worship. This is pointing up. This is pointing in, but it's not just staying in. This is community, where we come together, as Emily said, talk about community groups, and then this is going out. And when we accomplish all these things in conjunction, working together, we create, or we join a movement. And that's what we want to do here from day one. We didn't want to just start a church where some people from the neighborhood come and worship. We want that, and we're glad to see some more people from the neighborhood coming together to worship. But we want to plant churches. We want to start churches just like we were started October 8th, 2016. All over, who start churches that then go out and start churches that start churches that start churches. That's what we want to be a part. Multiplication, or multiplying, is key to any movement. So I want you to consider, we've just celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and so social justice, that kind of thing, may be a little more on our heart. So I want to talk about the civil rights movement and how multiplication was so key to that. One of the key moments was the MLK Jr.-led march on Washington in August 1963. We watched this movie. We've been watching the I Have a Dream speech every year. That's been the tradition. I talked about that last Sunday. But we watched a documentary called The March. I highly recommend that you all watch it. It was so instructive for me. And it went through all of what went into that day. And I confess, I was so ignorant of that day. What happened was it started with a small group of people that shared, certainly Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision and some of the other leaders of the movement, but it started very small, and then they added to their numbers until it began to multiply. Really, it bubbled up all over the country. It culminated, did you know there were over 200,000 people that came to the march? It's funny, they were talking about how that morning they were kind of sitting around wondering if anybody was going to come. And they showed some video of the first bus that came over the corner, and then there were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I think they said 100 buses an hour were coming in at one point in the day. The march in August 1963 eventually led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, almost a year ago, enacted in July of the following year. That legislation finally, it's hard to imagine, but that legislation is what finally outlawed discrimination in the U.S. based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. So we see some of it, right? We see some of it. But it's hard to imagine the law needing to be changed. And so, I mean, it really wasn't that long ago. So even we're still, I mean, some of you were around then, but wherever you are in history, wherever you are in your own experiences, that wasn't a long time ago. That was a movement that is still going, right? The Civil Rights Movement was really about individual people. Just like the movement that God's calling us to. Individual people like Dr. John Perkins. If you've never heard of him, I want to introduce you to him, and I want you to get to know who he was. John Perkins, who counted the cost, and I want to read to you just a couple of little excerpts from this book. John Perkins has been an influence personally at the district church. Pastor Aaron Graham knows him personally. He's been there to speak. And one of my other mentors, Derwin Gray, he was just recently with Dr. Perkins, so he's been a direct influence on me indirectly through a couple of my influences. I want to read you a couple. He was there at the march with Martin Luther King, was close personal friends, but I want to read you just a little snippet of his life. He said, "I like to talk about the positive changes of integration. However, it's harder to talk about the costs and the unintended effects. Take, for example, the schools. And just imagine, those of you who have kids, this kind of experience. 6 of my children," he names the names, "were among the first black children to attend the all-white school in Mendenhall. While they were there, their white teachers did not treat them the same way they treated the white children. Philip's teacher wouldn't allow him to answer questions in class. Why? Because he was black. For 2 years, Spencer went to the school and no one talked to him. The seat next to him was always left empty. And as far as people at the school were concerned, both his first and last name were a racial slur." So can you imagine what that would have felt like? He ends this chapter kind of telling the story. "People like me, Martin Luther King Jr., and a few others sometimes earn a hero status for the things we did during the Civil Rights Movement. But really, the daily, faithful acts of ordinary black and white folks made the movement what it was." Did you hear that? Many of you probably can resonate more with that. You probably feel more like an ordinary person. This movement, the world being changed upside down, is primarily led by ordinary people. So there's hope for you and me, right? The many people committed to the marching and boycotting who got no recognition but rather rocks thrown at them were instrumental in tearing down the social walls of segregation. I'm thankful for my chance to be a leader, but I cannot tell my story without acknowledging how much I depend on others. The names of the many humble and courageous people may never be known, but the stories I tell are representative of their individual works. I hope you'll get to know Dr. Perkins, especially as he is still alive. This was a movement that began small. One person simply influencing another person, and that's addition. But then that person influences another, and that person influences another, and it begins to multiply. So think about Jesus. Didn't write any books, didn't write any manuals, nothing like that. We just have his words recorded. One person with a very simple message. The simple message of Jesus, I mean, other than follow me, really was his core message. But his message was this. The whole thing was, love God, love your neighbor. Love God, love your neighbor. And the Apostle Paul then says, later on in Galatians, the whole entire thing is summed up in this one word, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Like, that's the whole thing. We complicate it, and Rod, Bernard, and I, we complicate it, we get overcomplicated in what church is all about, but when it all boils down to it, the whole issue of Jesus is love God and love people. He taught 12 men and a handful of women the basics, and then it caught on, and it multiplied and turned the world upside down. And we are part of that movement. It's the kingdom of Jesus Christ. It's the kingdom. It's something that is so much greater and bigger than we can ever even imagine. Jesus said, in fact, that he would build his church. I mean, he didn't call me when I felt like I felt like the finger of God literally pointed here when we were driving up Sandbag Highway and literally pointed at the downtown crowd and said, I am sending you here. Like, very few experiences ever with my life. Laura's with me. We're driving back from a conference in early 2014, February, and it was just like God was saying, I'm sending you here. But this wasn't about me. This wasn't about what I could do. This was about what He could. That's why our mission statement is we are joining God in the restoration of all things. Jesus said, I will build my church. Not Ed, I'm calling you to build it. I'm going to build my church. And even the gates of hell, like whatever hell you think you're going through or have ever gone through, and I've been there, felt like just falling apart. The gates of hell cannot thwart Jesus' plan to build His church in this movement. Praise God. That's a good place for an amen. So by the way, if you come from a church where it's like real quiet, we don't want to be that church. It's funny, I've rarely preached in all white churches. And I remember Pastor Bernard and I, we had a pastor in the Chinese church, a white guy, a wonderful guy, Scott Hessler. He mentored us in many ways. And I went to preach in his church. And it's a wonderful church. It's a wonderful church. It was just in a pretty white, area. And it was just a little bit different. And that's fine. And I love my white folks. And I especially love when there's an amen. Amen. Come on now. Come on. So anyway, before I put my foot in my mouth, it's a very good opportunity to say, hey, amen, or whatever. Our vision is to participate in that movement, the kingdom of Jesus Christ, through church planting, which happens as we simply multiply at every level. So I'll explain what that means in a few minutes, but before we get into details, let's talk about why it's important. So why is multiplication part of our vision? Well, consider a few things. Consider less than 20% of all the people in America have much of anything to do with the church. And the best I could calculate in the last year and a half, 10% in Gaithersburg. So, that is not okay to us. The fact that such a tiny percentage of people in our city are connected with any regularity to a church. And I'm talking about they regularly attend a church service. I'm not talking about your neighbor talked about growing up and they went to a youth group or they talk about God or they say they're a Christian. I'm talking about being connected, which is a big deal to us. Our culture, consider that our culture is less connected to Jesus and less connected to faith in Jesus than ever before. Most of the people that you and I meet this week or see, unless you're in a really small bubble, most of the people have no personal connection to Jesus. They have no connection to a loving, gracious, merciful God. And they're going through the same kind of hardships that you are without that. Now, statistics don't move us, but these things ought to get our attention. I meet couples when I say I meet couples all the time, I do 35 plus weddings a year, and I counsel a third of those, and in and through those meetings, I meet friends, and I just meet people all the time. I'm counseling with couples almost every single week of the year. And so I'm not just saying, the clerk at, when I was buying groceries, Like, I meet and have this conversation with couples, millennial couples, young couples, for the most part, all the time. And they tell me the same thing. Because of negative experiences with the church in their past, they have stopped participating altogether. And there's lots of reasons for that. One common reason is boring, ain't got nothing to do with me. So why would I want to be a part of that? It could be, and this is, I wouldn't say that this is so common, but in some cases, there's just an abuse of power. It could be they just had some bad leaders, and that's not all uncommon. It's inauthentic. Maybe it's just legalistic, and just, I went to this church, and all they did was tell me about the wrong things that I did. I told you a literal story about a woman, a couple that I met, and the woman talked about a church that she went to, and she was in a youth group. She was disciplined by her youth leader because she had non-Christian friends. And you know what she says? Peace out on that. And I told her, peace out on that for sure, because I would discipline my church members for not having friends that weren't part of the church. I'm joking, about that, but not really. We want you to go out. That's what this message is all about. So even so, right, the hope of the world is not just Jesus. In one sense, yes, Jesus is the hope of the world. But that wasn't what Jesus said. Jesus didn't say, I'm going out into all the world to disciple the nations, did he? He didn't say that. He said, you are going out into the world and making disciples. And what you're going to teach them is to obey everything that I have commanded. Well, thankfully, it's not a book this thick. It's love God, love your neighbor. And that's how I've summed it up. There's a little more to it, but that's pretty much it. Jesus said that the church is a city on a hill that whose light cannot be hidden, that is to shine in the darkness. It is going to take all kinds of churches to reach all kinds of people. Languages, cultures, different demographics, different places. I mean, our church ought to be flavorful. It ought to be a little spicy. I hope all of you will come back and have lunch next week, whether you bring something or not. And I promise, one way or another, you're going to have some tastes and some different flavors from different places because we have people from different places. And God willing, Miguel will be here to cook some really yummy food. He and Daniela are moved. Literally, she texted me this morning. She's supposed to do an announcement. They're moving literally like across the street, which is really exciting. Our vision is to do everything we can to participate and contribute to that movement. So, how does multiplication begin? Number one, multiplication begins. You remember, like Super Size, and there was that McDonald's movie, Super Size Me? We made the mistake. I didn't know anything about it, and Pastor Bernard suggested that we had 40 teenagers on a charter bus going from Maryland, Montgomery County, 8 hours up to New York to snow camp around this time of the year, more than 15 years ago. And Bernard says, I think we should get this movie. I don't remember how it all went down. But 3 kids threw up watching the movie. And then we stop at the rest area, and the only place to eat is McDonald's. Now, our vision requires upsize, like God-sizing. We need a God-sized vision to see this happen. So we say that we are joining, get this 2 parts, mission. We are joining God in the restoration of all things. Just think about that. If that is true, and if that is what's really happening, and that's what really we're doing, we are joining the creator of the universe, who put the billions and billions and billions of stars into outer space, and we can't even see. It's mind-boggling. But where is his focus? Here. Why did he put all that out there? So that we could look out and say, wow. We are joining God, the God who spoke it. I can't wait next week. Give away the first few words. In the beginning. That's where we're going to start next week. It's funny, my buddy Eli, some of you met him. He is a church planter in our network right up in Urbana. They just planted a few weeks ago. And he posted a picture the other day of a couple of commentaries on Revelation. And I was like, dude, you're preaching the end of the book, and I'm about to preach the beginning of the book, and we can just kind of come together on this and swap. It'd be great. We'll get the beginning to the end. This is a big vision. We are joining God. Don't come to the owner's orientation because you want to join Ed. I mean, that makes me feel good. I want, okay. Last week we had 6 couples in our house, talking about marriage. Man, that gets me fired up. I was fired up. I can't wait to, hopefully they come back. Hopefully they come back tonight. I mean, if you show up, that's going to be really exciting, but I hope that you show up because there's something about joining God that just gets the motor cranking a little bit. We are joining God, the way we say this is, we're joining Him in the restoration of all things. And I think it was Pastor Rada, it was some time ago, I think wisely said, that's just, how do we do that? How does this impact the restoration of all things? Well, it starts with some things. It starts with a student. It starts with one family being reconciled. It starts with one little work of justice. It starts with one little work of beauty. It starts with a few artists that are empowered. It starts with beauty and peace and shalom. It's in small little ways that wasn't there before, but now it's there, and it starts with addition. And then another student gets tutored at Fieldred Elementary School. And then maybe, I don't know, I'm not a prophet, but maybe in the next few years there's going to be a tutoring program. And we're providing the kind of services that Fieldred Elementary School students, especially those that really are in need, that wouldn't otherwise have those resources. Restoration Church, because we're here, we enter into that space, and it takes a while. It's addition, but then it begins to multiply. Do you know the Hallmark Standard ESOL program in Montgomery County is through Seneca Creek Community Church? The church, the city goes to the church. I don't know if it's the city or the county. I can't remember. Do you remember, Rob? City, church, or city or county? I don't remember. I don't remember how it worked. Basically, they started this many, many years ago, and it's the program that either the city or the county uses. It's amazing. Omira, I think she's with the kids. Omira's been part of that, participating in it. That's awesome. So we say that we are joining God in the restoration of all things. But we start with some things. Part of our problem is that our vision is not big enough. And I confess, I am so guilty of this. And I think there are two culprits. One is distraction. What? Oh, right? Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever just gotten distracted? Actually, I forgot to turn my phone on. I'm afraid to touch it now because the timer will go off. But just since I've been talking, I've been getting notifications because I forgot to turn the dang things off. I'm trying not to look at it. Thankfully, it's not like a football game going on and I'm looking at the scores. But that has happened before. I remember doing that. Preaching at a church that had a 1 o'clock service and the Redskins were playing and I forgot to turn it off. And I'm freaking out, trying not to show it. We get so distracted. There's some studies. We were just the other night, we were talking, I can't remember if it was at Bernard's house or what the context was, but we were talking about the effect. It was Rod and Bernard. They were talking about there's some new research that came out that if your screen looks really nice and flashy, it distracts you more. So what's the solution? Make it look real ugly. And so I can't remember what it's called. It's you turn it to black and white. But both of them were well, no, this looks so cool. I like checking it out even more, There's unlimited things that distract us. Technology, entertainment, these are not things that are all bad. They're not always good. And it's not even that it's good or bad, but is it helpful? Is it helpful? And I'm just trying to be as honest as I can. That's the thing I'm wrestling. So we're about to enter into the Lent season, and there's this game I like to play, and it just kind of helps me get my mind off things. It's pool, okay? Cool. Back in the day, when I was a teenager, that was where I hung out at the pool hall. I actually played some tournaments. Not great. Not trying to say any of that, but we had a pool table, at home, and my dad and I shot a lot of pool, and I kind of like that. And there was some gambling pool sharks where I hung out, and I was not one of them, and I wasn't in that category. But I just like it. I like the game, It's chess-esque, sort of, where you're thinking of shots ahead of time and whatever. And so for one of the things I'm doing, I'm totally shutting down talk radio for that. This is just me, okay? And the game, and technology at night, and just those things, they're just distracting me. And then what happens is I miss seeing people. I miss sensing the needs around me. I hope nobody gets unnecessarily convicted by what I'm about to share, or think that I'm saying this is right or wrong. But what do we do when we're in line at a store? The first thing, whip out the phone and checking something, looking at it's not bad, it's not wrong, right? But when I'm doing that, I have no sense of who's around me. I don't see the people around me. And if I'm going to the same stores, which I like to do, and I like to be a creature of habit, we know everybody at Chick-fil-A, they know us by name. I go to the Starbucks, they see me, oh, Ed, yep, grande, whatever, and it's just like clockwork. And I love that because then I like being a creature of habit, but then I have relationships. But if I'm just down in my phone, I'm not saying don't do it, but distractions, then I can't see. My vision is shrunk in and all I see is me. All I see is me. And then those little acts of kindness, like smiling at the cashier and just noticing that this mom behind me, her kid's screaming and it's really annoying, but she's going through something in life. And what she just needs is just, everybody's looking at her with evil eyes. And if I just smile say a kind word, lean down and say hi to their screaming baby instead of being annoyed. But when it's like this, when all I see is me, it's just annoying. Those people. I'm sure it's just me. It's distraction, but it's also discouragement. These two things that keep our vision so small. Discouragement, when I just focus on my own self-preservation and I'm not immersing my mind and my heart in God, in God's greatness and what He wants to do in a moment. Wow. I often feel bad for myself. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, amen. Pastor Ed. I love it. Come on, Yeah, I'm probably the only one in here, but sometimes, dang it, whatever just happened, Yeah, I go out a couple weeks ago when it was really cold and my dang van didn't start. They got to jump my van and take it and pay all this money for a new dang battery. And then I talked to Alfredo and he talks to me about the situation in Venezuela. And I'm like, oh, idiot. Now it's like, oh God, thank you. Thank you. I have been spending time with Alfredo over the last few weeks. He's joined our staff with our kids. I didn't plan on saying any of this, but he is just a man of God. I thank God for bringing people like that. So now when I'm meeting with him on a weekly basis, now what's happening is my discouragement and my distraction is a little bit less, and now I'm zeroing in. My vision of God's getting bigger because of His influence and the things that He's saying in my life. Most of us have days or weeks or even months where distraction and discouragement derail us from God's vision for our lives. In a community group, it often happens when we're lacking community. And our perspective is just our perspective. And then I don't have someone reminding me or having a different perspective. It's so healthy to have a different perspective. So if that's you, if you have been wrestling for a season with distraction and discouragement, and you're lacking community, start there. Just start there. That's going to be really, really good. In a community group, you'll find care, belonging, and accountability, and imperfect sinning people. So just welcome each other. Tonight I'm just welcoming sinners into the sinner's home, where there's lots of forgiveness and there's lots of grace, even for me. And if there's enough grace even for me, then you're welcome too. Jesus always had a big vision for His church. In Acts 1:8, He said this, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Samaria and to the uttermost part of the earth." So 3 things about Jesus' huge vision for His church. Number 1, it was Spirit-led. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. This isn't up to your own wisdom or intuition. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to just pull the bootstraps up and get to it. No. We're not abandoned to ourselves, self-effort, and human wisdom. Second, it's mission-shaped. You will be my witnesses. There's a mission tied to the call. We don't have to have it all figured out. The Spirit enables us simply to be what? Witnesses. What is a witness? What does a witness do? A witness shares what they have seen and experienced. Have you seen or experienced God work in your life? You're qualified. Have you experienced restoration in any way, even the slightest way? You're qualified. Then you can do this. That's you. You qualify as a witness. You can tell somebody else what God has done. That's kind of the Christian life. And then third, it's multiplying. He says it's going to be in Jerusalem, near Judea, a little bit further, out to Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And the rest of the book of Acts, from 1 to 28, and then extended into 29 through us, because there's no 29, we see the church multiplying. That's the story that's written, and that's the story that we're going to talk about. It also, Pastor Rod wisely chimed in on this, not only was it just multiplying churches, multiplying multi-ethnic churches, and in Acts 13 we see the model church in Antioch. And we're going to see it explicitly. We're not making it up. Like this is just a fun thing because we live in a multi-ethnic place. No, we're going to see it explicitly in through the book of Acts. Notice the size of God's dream. We read this. We're going to read it as we close the service in a few minutes in Ephesians 3:20. And by the way, Ephesians 3:20 was written in the context of Acts chapter 20 when Paul was in Ephesus. And so Acts and Ephesians are tied together along with many other books because it's chronology. It's a story of Paul's missionary stories. Foot and mouth moment. All right, Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more," like it's a huge vision, immeasurably more than all we could ask or even imagine. Your finite human mind can't even imagine the size of God's dream and His vision. According to what? Oh, this power that is worked within us that raised Jesus from the dead. And that power that by one word of Jesus, the whole universe was created. And by that same power, Colossians says, He upholds, He sustains the entire universe by His word. And when He's ready to set it all ablaze and recreate it all, and we'll all live for Him forever, it's not going to happen through a sword, but He will have a sword. But He's not going to even pull it out. He's going to say, I don't know exactly what He's going to say, but it's time! all the revelation, go to, don't go. Listen to Pastor Eli, talk about it. But, as you read those last few chapters, the armies of the earth are going to rise up, and Jesus is going to say, boop, and they're all knocked over in one word. We've started small here, but we do have a big vision. When we started in October 2016, Pastor Bernard, Pastor Rod, and I, we got together and we wrote something like this. In 5 years, so we're 1 year into it, our vision was to have 25 community groups, 200 owners of the mission, 100 leaders, measuring sentness with planting or starting new churches, missions, people being sent out from here, and greater involvement in blessing the neighborhoods and networks, both near Field Road, our communities, and far. So that's our vision. That's what we're praying for. That's what we're longing for. That's what we're working towards. That feels impossible. So we're hoping to go from 2 to 3 groups, the next few weeks, and then from 3 to 4 or 5, this year, maybe 7. We've kind of dreamed of potentially 9 groups. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we won't. But we're starting small. We have a big vision that God has given to us. Multiplication begins with a God-sized vision, but it also needs leaders. In other words, secondly here, multiplication happens at every level. John Maxwell has wisely said on many different occasions that everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's scary. It gives me chills thinking that everything rises and falls on the leadership of this church like that. I am bearing a big responsibility. The leaders of our church bear a big responsibility. But that's one of the reasons why we want to see 100 leaders in our leadership community over the course of the next 4 years. The stewardship and accountability to serve and lead is tremendous. Leadership at every level will determine how well we accomplish our vision. It's not going to just happen by keeping, people aren't just going to come and show up and the church is going to grow. It doesn't work that way. But as we multiply at every level, from greeting at the door to serving in the children's ministry to singing, setting up, by the way, if you are a willing-bodied person, we have some opportunities for you. There's a sign-up sheet. Pastor Rod's got it right there. Go look, Pastor Rod. Wave, hey, Pastor Rod. Some people aren't looking because they don't want to see that. But if you are able-bodied and you're willing to come for 30 minutes, maybe up to 30 to 40 minutes at 9 o'clock. So if you show up at 9:30 and you're like, hey, I'm here for the setup team, we're going to say, you are fired. Come back next week. We won't tell you that, actually. But things will pretty much be done. So we're just, 45 minutes it takes a bit to set up, and we can use more people so you can sign up back there. But in all these areas, we want to multiply. It starts by adding, but then we want to multiply. Leadership really is influence, right? And those of us who are followers of Jesus are His witnesses. We are kingdom ambassadors for Jesus. We looked at this the last week in 2 Corinthians 5. Ambassadors for Christ, agents of restoration. Therefore, we all have some responsibility. If what I said last week is true, and we all have the ministry, we've all been given the ministry of reconciliation, we're all leaders of something. We're all influencing something. In Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul lays this out. He said, so Christ gave the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip His people for works of service. Not to do it all, but to be equipping, to be multiplying. It's the vision here. Why? So that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity. And he goes on from there. I mean, this was the vision that Jesus, God, had from the beginning of the church. I've said this many times, I'll continue to say it. Restoration Church is not led by a gifted pastor, but Restoration Church is made up of gifted people. all the people of Restoration Church are gifted. Every person has been gifted and is therefore a leader, influencer at some level. Now the secret sauce, hang in with me, the secret sauce to fulfilling the vision is to be a multiplying church, and that happens at every level. So what am I talking about? Another word for this is apprenticing. And there's been some leaders and influencers from Rod and Bernard and I who have introduced this term and suggest that it might be better than, you've probably heard the word disciple or discipling or disciple making, but apprenticing, especially if you've been part of a trade or any type of work or activity where you're a carpenter and someone kind of apprentices, and then you learn by watching and then doing and observing, and through that process then you become a master carpenter. That's the idea. So I love the idea. I've taken many of the concepts from Dave and John Ferguson. They're pastors in Chicago, and they've written a book called Exponential, so it's kind of about multiplying this topic. And here's how they put it. They said this apprenticeship is not about finding people who can help us do tasks more effectively. Like, we'd like to do that. We'd like to do that, but it's not just that. We're not talking about preparing people to simply replace us so that we can move on to something else, although we'd like to do that too. At the heart of biblical apprenticeship is a mindset of reproduction, reproducing our leadership so the mission will be carried on to future generations. So I'm not just asking you to come do what I'm doing. I'm asking you to come and learn what I'm doing so that you can then teach someone else to do it, who can then teach someone else, and we can multiply. So that in 2 years, Lord willing, when we start a new church, Alfredo has been doing this for a year and a half over the children's ministry. Now we have a team of people we can send to start a new church. See how that works? So it's not just, hey, when Annie's not here and she has a baby, who's going to make coffee? I mean, that's well, good place to start, But what is happening already just in the last couple of weeks? Rod is raising up a team of people who are doing this, and it's going to get passed on, and it's going to get passed on so that we can multiply. So let's make this very practical. The Fergusons, along with many others, suggest these 5 simple steps to just kind of wrap it up with a couple of thoughts here. Every one of us is either a leader, influencer at some level, or you start at level 1. It's that simple. So here's the way you do it. Let's say, here's the way it goes. I do it, you watch, then we talk about it. That's the first step, right? So that may be where some of you are. You haven't volunteered anywhere, you're not necessarily a leader, you're not doing much of anything. So what we do, we want to invite you to watch what someone else is doing. This steps 1, 2, and 3, by the way, may happen in one day. You may watch me for a minute and they say, hey, I see you kind of know what you're doing here. Why don't you plug that in over here? And then now we're up to step 2, which is I do, you help, and then we talk. And then step 3 is, okay, now, hey, next week when we come, how about you set this up and plug this thing in or whatever it is, and then I'll help you, and then we'll talk about it. How did it go? What did you think? Okay, yada, yada. Then you do it, and I watch. I'll observe. And then let's talk about it. Then, now it changes to the addition. Now it's you do, and you're inviting someone else to come in. And now I'm moving on over here, and now we've added. Once that happens a second time, now we're beginning to multiply. And then if that happens across every level. Someone who's just a greeter. Well, I use the example of community groups in here, right? So here's an example. You go to a community group and you just observe and you participate. That's level 1. I've joined a community group. Now I'm part of it. And so then, I observe the leaders and I feel like, hey, maybe God's calling me into this. There's a conversation that happens. And then you help the leader with some aspect of the group. If your leader says, hey, would you mind helping out with this? Or you say, hey, I might volunteer. I think I can help out with this. And you start helping out with that aspect of the group. Maybe it's a sharing time that you're going to lead, or you're going to pray at the end, or you're going to help coordinate the food or whatever it is. And then you talk about, hey, how'd that go? Is that a good fit? And, oh, yeah, I'd love to do this. Oh, hey, I'm thinking that this may work out. How about next week you do it, and then I'll help you. And then we begin an apprenticing relationship. And again, it may happen 1 week, it may happen 6 weeks, it may happen 6 months, whatever. And then now, hey, why don't you lead the group? And I'll just kind of hang tight, and I'll kind of observe and kind of coach along anything that you might need, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah. Now, we had 10 people come to our owner's orientation. We're ready to start a new group. Is God calling you to start a new group, or is He calling me to start a new group? Now we have 2 leaders that can lead the group. And now I can go over here. Now I can start doing this again. That person can start doing it over there. It's not that we're breaking up groups to, splinter or anything like that, but we're trying to multiply leaders at every level. It applies to every ministry here at Restoration Church. One of the things that makes me excited is that in my life, the times where I've grown the most is where I have been stretched out of my comfort zone. when I've taken a risk to do something that's bigger beyond what I could actually do. So in 1998, that's the 90s for some of you. That was like a millennium ago, or millennial, or whatever. I was 22 years old in college, and I was asked to consider, I was working at a Christian college, and there were camps, and there was this teen camp where there was an island, and you had to actually take a boat to get over the island. And I was asked to consider being the boat captain. Oh, that sounds good. Ed Choy, boat captain. There were 400 plus campers that came for a week, for 9 weeks at a time, and over 150 staff. And so saying yes to be the boat captain meant that I was now supervising 3 other college students and 9 teenagers who had to get not only 400 kids on and off the island all week, but all the leaders, all the staff. I mean, over 1,000 people every week on and off the island. A lot of responsibility, a lot of danger in that as well. The phrase that kept coming to my mind was sold out. I can remember this so vividly. I just came to this point where I realized, okay, I think I can do it, but boy, I'm just going to have to be sold out. I'm just going to have to sell out to this, to what God wanted to use me and how He wanted me to serve others. And I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what does it mean to be sold out. So I started asking around. I remember asking leaders and the CEO guy, for the whole worldwide organization. I got to drive them across the course and I'm like, hey Joe, I got this question for you. Anyway, I won't try to imitate how he said it, but I remember him vividly unpacking for me that basically the idea was that you were doing something to serve others for the glory of God. That's how you sell out. I mean, there's more to it, right? But that's kind of what it was. Serving others for the glory of God. So if we're going to be a mission-shaped, multi-ethnic, multiplying church, it's going to take a growing group of people who are sold out for the mission and vision. Everybody isn't going to be, we're going to be at all different places in how we are committed to that. I understand that. I'm not, ignorant, think everybody's going to jump on board. But we're going through a process. But it's going to take a growing number of people over the next 1 to 5 years if we're going to see 25 community groups and 200 owners of the mission and 100 leaders. It's going to take a big commitment. So at the end of the day, this begins with you. In Acts 1, Jesus says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem. So it takes a God. We got to upsize our vision. We need to multiply leaders at every stage, every level. It's going to take you and me. That's in Georgia vernacular. That's all y'all. Yeah. That's not y'all. That's all y'all. You, of course, started with, in Acts 1:8, Jesus is talking to a specific group of people. Started with those first followers of Jesus. But that's been God's vision for His church from day one. His vision for multiplication has been passed on to every generation. And the leader of this ministry that Laura and I met at, and actually where Rod and Andy met as well, his name is Jack Wharton. He would say, he's well known for saying this, quote, I believe it is the responsibility of every generation to reach their generation for Christ. It is our responsibility to reach our generation. Jesus continues to say, all y'all can do it. You are my witnesses. You have my power. That was His vision 2,000 years ago, and that's His vision for us. One of my pastoral heroes, Bill Hybels, he has said on many occasions that the church is the hope of the world. And I believe that. Our ability to provide a life-giving experience here on Sundays. I was over with Alfredo, with the kids a little earlier, and I'm just like, Lord, I'm so grateful that Alfredo is stepping in this position. He needs people to help. If God has wired you to love and work with kids, like we have a strategy, we have materials, we have curriculum, we just need some folks to join in that. We're praying for that. And I was just really excited this morning as I was just walking through that, and we have some physical things that are going to be going up over there that are going to help us get to the spiritual things, but it's also going to give trust as parents walk in for the first time, and they don't just see a gym with balls being thrown all over the place. We're going to have a kind of a cool setup over there. And I thought, wow, this is part of giving an hour of life-giving experience to a mom who's had a hard week. A dad who's just been having a hard time. And when you come in and you get to just worship and you know that your kids are in a nice, safe place, that's part of the vision. That's where we're going in the weeks ahead. But not only a life-giving experience on Sundays, but to gather in the week for care, belonging, and accountability. The stakes are high. And then how we actually engage and bless our neighborhood, how we bless Gaithersburg and beyond. It's up to you and me. God isn't limited. Like if we say no, God can just raise somebody up. He can just call somebody else. But like we're going to see in the book of Acts, the church in Jerusalem said no when God said go. And you know what God did? Persecution. Conflict. And then they were forced out to Antioch and started the model church, really, the multi-ethnic church of Antioch. He can raise up whomever he wants, but we have the opportunity to join him in the work of restoration that he is bringing into our community. So I'm just going to wrap up with 2 points of application and we'll be done, I promise. Preacher's going along today, I apologize again. We're saying vision. See, once we get back, next week, I promise Tom, I'm going to work on this. But listen, some of you are not owners of the mission. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Consider coming to our ownership orientation February 4th and 11th. We're going to do it right here. There's a classroom down the hall right in here. And we're going to do a 2-part orientation where we'll talk about who we are, what we believe, where we're going, and how you can get involved. Okay? So what you can do on your connection card, you can just write own, owners, ownership, anything with own in it, ownership orientation on that. That will register you. And if you put your email, or if you've already on our email thing, we'll have a link to a registration set up this week. You can just register that real simple. Come at 9:30. We'll do it 45, 50 minutes, and we'll be ready. So if you want to come at 9 and help us set up and then come to the orientation, you're welcome to do that, but no pressure. For all of our owners, I believe God is calling us to multiply at every level. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Prayerfully consider inviting somebody to do what you're doing. It's really that simple. But I'm also extending it. Not just so some of you aren't in a position or whatever. If you are, prayerfully consider that. Maybe it's someone in here. You can invite somebody that's not serving. Hey, I think it might be a good fit for that. But here's what I feel like God is calling us to in this next few weeks. Invite somebody into one of our 3 environments. Invite somebody here to worship. And I thank God, so many of you, we've done that really well, so keep doing that. Secondly, invite people to your community group. And third, invite people to how your community group is blessing the neighborhood. So community groups this year, one of our themes is parties. Everybody say party.
Party.
Yeah, party, yeah. Go along, preach. Come on, shut up. We need to get this to. We need to get the party started, right? And so, but that's one thing we're going to do, and that's going to present an opportunity for all of us to invite people into our community groups. So I want to pray with us. We're going to wrap it up, and my main focus really is that we are listening to what God is saying and responding. So let's just bow together, and I just want to ask you, what is God saying to you?